Hello, today we'll be making a masculine congratulations card, and I'm starting off with the mosaic stencil from Tim Holtz and a card front that I sprayed with distressed oxide inks, and I made that about a week ago, so I don't really remember what color sprays I used. I'm going to start off by taping my stencil to my card front using post-it tape. And I've got some wide post-it tape, so I'm just cutting it down the center here to make it stretch further. And I'm going to be taping my card front at an angle, as you can see here. Now I'm going to do some ink blending through the stencil using Distress Ink Black Soot, and I will be using one of my makeup brushes that I bought from Amazon. And when I do this ink blending, I am just going to go for a fairly soft look around the edges. I don't want the hard lines of the edge of the stencil. Now I wanted to add a little something in those corners that were kind of bare, so I'm reapplying the stencil along the edge of the card front in the corners. I'm going to tape it down again using those same pieces of post-it tape, and then I'm going to take the other piece of post-it tape and I'm going to mask off part of the stencil. So I can apply Nuvo embellishment mousse in Cosmic Brown in just the places that I masked off of the stencil. When applying this mousse, you want to make sure that you apply a nice even coat through the stencil and scrape off the excess. And then I'm going to remove the stencil and flip it around to the other corner and do the same thing. Now on this one, the embellishment mousse that I had already applied was in the way of where the stencil was going to lay, so I took that black soot ink pad and put it underneath the stencil so it didn't touch my wet embellishment mousse. Once you're done, make sure that you scrape your palette knife well, close up your container, wash your stencils in your palette knife, because the embellishment mousse will dry and make it very difficult to get off of your tools. Here I'm showing you that I am using the Lawn Fawn Shadow Box card Ocean add-on, and I'm just using that banner die out of the set. And I've cut it out of black cardstock, and I am putting it in my Tim Holtz platform. I'm taking a piece of acetate. I'm sticking it over the banner die cut. And this will enable me to stick a stamp on top of it and form it to the shape of the banner die cut. I do apologize for being mostly off screen for this part. I cut a lot of it out because I was off screen. I'm using the Altenew Lace Up stamp set, and I'm going to be using the greeting, "You are made of awesome." We'll be embossing it in Nouveau embossing powder in Copper Blush. So here I'm using the Congrats sentiment from Concord and Ninth Everyday Greetings. And I started off with typing paper, which was a mistake. You want to use a good quality cardstock for this because you don't want any feathering around the image in your ink. So I'm using the Gina K Amalgam ink, which is a really rich dark ink. You want a good quality ink and a good quality cardstock to avoid as much feathering as possible. And the reason why you want to avoid feathering is because I am going to be making a shadow image out of this by scanning it with my scanner and then tracing the image with Cricut and making a shadow image with the program and then putting it into Cricut Design Space and cutting it out with my Cricut. So here we are in Cricut, and you want to choose the file that you scanned in. Mine is the Congrats stamp. And then you want to choose the black color. As you can see, mine is defaulted on it, but to choose it, you just double click on that little box and then choose the color on the file, which you just click on the black color. And then here I'm showing you that you want to have your smooth and detail settings on 100, and then you just click preview or update preview and then click OK. And now we're going to zoom in And as you can see, I've got some stray nodes or stray black dots. And so I'm just going to click on those and delete them. I am clicking on them and then hitting the delete key on my keyboard. The little stray nodes came from the feathering that I referred to earlier. So that's why you want to use the best quality cardstock and ink as possible. And what we're trying to achieve here after you get rid of the little stray nodes is straight lines where straight lines are supposed to be and smooth curves where smooth curves are supposed to be. So if you see, like on this R, where there is a bit of a curve where the line is supposed to be straight, you want to get rid of the node that is inset between the two straight nodes. I hope that makes sense. I won't be showing the whole process of this because it took a little bit of time, not a terrible amount of time, but a little bit. I think it's worth it if you can't afford to buy die sets for all of your stamps and you can't afford a ScanNCut. I do believe that this little bit of time is worth it because you will be able to use this file over and over again. One more thing I wanted to note, you will see that I am clicking a node, deleting it, and then clicking off the image. The reason why I am doing that is because in SureCuts-A-Lot, for whatever reason, if you click the delete key twice, like if you click node, delete it, then click a node, delete it, the whole image or letter in this case will turn blue, and then if you delete it, it will delete the whole letter. So I've just gotten in the habit of clicking a node, deleting it, then clicking off, then clicking a node, deleting it, and then clicking off, so this doesn't happen. Once you have your image looking exactly the way you want, you're going to right click on the image to select it, and then left click, and a menu will pop up. And you'll select Appearance, and then Add Shadow Layer, and you will get a box that pops up that will give you options for your shadow layer. Because I wanted my shadow layer to fill in all the holes and the O's and whatnot, I chose blackout shadow in the options. And as you can see, I had that little hole there by the S, and so I'm just making the shadow bigger to fill in that hole, just the way I like it. And then we're going to select the whole thing, and we are going to export it as an SVG. And I am saving it to my desktop for easy access. Once in Design Space, you will upload it just like you do any SVG. Once in Design Space, I'm going to ungroup the two layers and I'm going to delete the black congrats part. I kept it because if I ever want to change the file later and make a bigger shadow or do something else with it, I don't want to have to scan all that into my computer again, but I just want the shadow layer for this particular project. So then we're going to click Make It and select our machine and cut the shadow layer just like we'd cut anything else. Now I have cut my paper, and I'm going to, you want to keep that, that negative space there and put it in your stamping platform. And then you are going to take your stamp and set it in the negative space. It's going to be just a little big for it, but it'll fit pretty good. You're going to want to center it in that negative space and then pick it up with your door. Once you have picked it up with your door, you're going to take the shadow cutout and stick it in that negative space. Then you can grab your Versamark or whatever your embossing ink of choice is and ink up your stamp and stamp it on and emboss as normal. Here I'm using that same copper blush Nuvo embossing powder. Now that the embellishment mousse on my card panel has dried, I'm going to attach it to some craft foam. I'm attaching score tape to the craft foam, and then I'm going to attach the card panel to the craft foam. And then I'm going to attach that all to my card base. Apologize again for being off screen there. I am just attaching some little scrap pieces of craft foam to my sentiments, and then I will be attaching those to the front of my card. Forgot to put my sentiment in the inside of my card before I put my card front on, which is unfortunate. I am using the Altenew stamp set entitled Best Dad, and I'm using the Proud of You sentiment. And this right here is why I said it was unfortunate that I didn't stamp the inside first. Something was on the door of my platform and I smudged the top inside of my card. Bummer. But I'm going to continue on. We're going to try to fix it later. My first go-to for fixing smudges and things like that is a Tombow Mono Sand Eraser, and this works for me most of the time. Unfortunately, today it did not work for me. A little bit closer and better look of the smudged inside of my card. Here's the finished card. I just decided to spray the inside with oxide inks. It got a little out of hand, but that's how I am with spray inks. I wasn't totally happy with it, but I wasn't completely unhappy with it either. It did the job. Thank you so much for watching my video if you made it all the way to the end, and we'll see you next time.